The betrayal. The transport vessel Horizon's dawn cut through the darkness of space, like a silver needle threading through black silk. Inside the command deck, Commander Marcus Webb stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the approaching space station grow larger in the viewport. Nexus Prime was the most impressive structure humanity had ever encountered. The station stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction, a massive wheel of metal and light that housed representatives from 73 different alien civilizations. This was the heart of the Galactic Council, where decisions affecting trillions of lives were made every single day. Marcus was 58 years old with hair that had turned completely white during his 40 years of military service. His face carried the weathered look of someone who had seen both the best and worst of humanity. He had fought in 3 wars, negotiated 17 peace treaties, and earned more medals than he had room to display. Now he carried humanity's hopes on his shoulders as Earth's first official diplomat to the Galactic Council. Every human being across 12 colony worlds was counting on him to secure their place among the stars. Standing beside him was Dr. Sarah Chun, his chief advisor and translator. She was 34 years old with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a mind that processed information faster than most computers. Sarah had spent the last decade learning alien languages, customs, and politics. She could speak 19 different alien tongues and understood the subtle body language of species that looked nothing like humans. Where Marcus brought experience and gravitas, Sarah brought knowledge and insight. Together, they formed humanity's diplomatic core. The pilot's voice crackled through the speakers. Commander Webb, we're being hailed by Nexus Prime Control. They're directing us to Docking Bay 17. Marcus nodded, acknowledged their instructions, and proceed as directed. Sarah checked her data tablet, reviewing the schedule one more time. The formal reception begins in 3 hours. Representatives from all major civilizations will attend, including the Draxian delegation. The Draxians were the problem. They had ruled the Galactic Council for almost 4,000 years through a combination of military might and political manipulation. Their empire stretched across 200 star systems and controlled more resources than any other civilization in known space. Supreme Sovereign Kelver, their absolute ruler, had opposed humanity's admission to the Council from the very beginning. The Draxians saw humans as dangerous newcomers who bred too quickly and expanded too aggressively. They wanted humanity confined to their small corner of space, isolated and controllable. Marcus had read every intelligence report about the Draxians. He knew they were proud, ruthless, and utterly convinced of their superiority. He also knew they had destroyed 3 other species who had challenged their authority over the past 2,000 years. Those civilizations simply ceased to exist, their worlds burned to glass, their names erased from galactic records. The Draxians called it maintaining order. Everyone else called it genocide. Stay close to me during the reception, Marcus said to Sarah. The Draxians will try to intimidate us. They'll test our reactions and look for weaknesses. We show them nothing but strength and confidence. Sarah nodded, though Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. She was brilliant, but this was her first major diplomatic mission. The weight of it pressed down on both of them like gravity from a dying star. The Horizon's dawn glided into the massive docking bay and settled onto its designated platform with barely a shudder. Through the viewport, Marcus could see the welcoming committee already assembled. There were dozens of aliens representing various civilizations, their forms ranging from vaguely humanoid to completely incomprehensible. But the group that drew his attention stood apart from the others. 6 Draxian warriors in ceremonial armor that gleamed like black ice. They were tall, nearly 8 feet in height, with 4 arms and skin that shifted between dark purple and deep blue. Their faces were angular and harsh, with 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern and mouths full of teeth designed for tearing meat. At the center of a Draxian group stood someone Marcus recognized from briefing files. General Vordak, commander of the Draxian Royal Guard and Supreme Sovereign, Kelver's most trusted enforcer. Vordak had personally led the extermination campaigns against 2 of the 3 species the Draxians had destroyed. He was not a diplomat. He was an executioner. Marcus and Sarah walked down the landing ramp into the docking bay. The air was breathable but carried a metallic tang that irritated the back of Marcus's throat. Artificial gravity held him firmly to the deck, set to what the Council considered standard, which was slightly heavier than Earth normal. A small alien with blue fur and 6 legs approached him first. This was Ambassador Tillix of the Rendari Collective, one of the few species who had spoken in favor of humanity's admission. Tillix's voice came through Sarah's translator device in perfect English. "Commander Webb, Dr. Chun, the Rendari Collective welcomes you to Nexus Prime. We have long awaited this moment." Marcus offered the traditional Rendari greeting, touching his forehead with 2 fingers. "The honor is ours, Ambassador Tillix. Humanity is grateful for your support." "Walk carefully here," Tillix said quietly, his large eyes darting toward the Draxian delegation. "There are those who do not share our enthusiasm for your arrival." Before Marcus could respond, General Vordak stepped forward, his 3 eyes fixed on Marcus with the intensity of targeting lasers. When he spoke, his voice was deep and resonant, like stones grinding together deep underground. The translator converted his words into cold, clipped English. "Commander Webb, I am General Vordak of the Draxian Royal Guard. Supreme Sovereign Kelver has commanded me to ensure your safety during your stay on Nexus Prime." The way he said safety made it sound like a threat rather than a promise. Marcus met Vordak's gaze without flinching. "We appreciate the Supreme Sovereign's concern, General. Humanity comes in peace and friendship." Vordak's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Peace and friendship are luxuries afforded only to those who understand their place in the galactic order. The Supreme Sovereign will help you understand yours." Sarah's hand tightened on her data tablet, but she kept her expression neutral. Marcus simply nodded. "We look forward to the Supreme Sovereign's wisdom." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of introductions and formalities. Marcus and Sarah were escorted to their assigned quarters, which were comfortable but clearly designed to remind them of their status. The rooms were smaller than those of other delegations. The windows looked out over service corridors rather than the Grand Plaza, and the furniture was sized for species smaller than humans, forcing them to hunch slightly when sitting. Sarah unpacked their diplomatic materials while Marcus reviewed his speech one final time. He had written and rewritten it dozens of times, searching for words that would inspire hope without threatening pride, that would demonstrate humanity's strength without appearing aggressive. Every sentence had been carefully calibrated to walk the razor's edge between confidence and arrogance. "Do you think they'll actually listen?" Sarah asked quietly. Marcus looked up from his notes. "Some will. The Rendari, the Cathani, maybe a dozen others. They're tired of Draxian dominance and see humanity as potential allies." He paused. "But the Draxians won't listen. They've already made their decision about us." "Then why did they allow us to come?" Marcus's expression darkened. "Because they want to make an example of us. They want every species in the galaxy to see what happens when someone challenges their authority." The words hung in the air between them like poison. Sarah wanted to argue, to say he was being paranoid, but she couldn't. The intelligence reports, the historical data, the pattern of Draxian behavior over thousands of years all pointed to the same conclusion. The Draxians didn't tolerate rivals. They eliminated them. A chime sounded at their door. It was time for the reception. The Grand Hall of Unity was breathtaking. The chamber was a perfect sphere with walls made of transparent crystal that showed the stars beyond. Gravity platforms floated at different levels, allowing species with different environmental needs to mingle comfortably. Light came from bioluminescent plants that grew in beautiful spirals along the walls, casting everything in a soft, ethereal glow. Music played from hidden sources, a blend of sounds from dozens of worlds that somehow harmonized into something greater than the sum of its parts. Marcus and Sarah entered the curious stares from hundreds of alien eyes. They moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting greetings and making small talk through Sarah's translator. The other species were cautiously friendly, asking questions about Earth and human culture with genuine interest. Some even expressed quiet support for humanity's bid to join the Council as full members. But the Draxians watched from the elevated platforms, reserved for the most powerful civilizations. They did not mingle or socialize. They simply watched with their 3-eyed gaze, waiting for something. Supreme Sovereign Kelver arrived precisely on schedule. The music stopped and every conversation died as the Draxian ruler entered the Grand Hall. Kelver was massive, even for a Draxian, standing nearly 9 feet tall with skin that shifted between deep purple and black like living shadows. He wore robes made from the scales of some massive creature, each one etched with symbols of conquest and domination. His 3 eyes glowed with cold intelligence as he surveyed the assembled delegates like a farmer inspecting livestock. General Vordak stood at his right hand, and behind them came 20 more warriors of the Royal Guard. It was an overwhelming display of power, designed to remind everyone who truly ruled the Galactic Council. Kelver's voice boomed through the chamber, without need for amplification. Today we welcome a new species to Nexus Prime. The humans have traveled far to stand before us. They seek recognition and membership in our council. He paused, his glowing eyes finding Marcus in the crowd. Let us see if they are worthy. It was not the warm welcome Marcus had hoped for, but it was better than open hostility. He stepped forward onto a speaking platform that rose from the floor, lifting him to Kelver's eye level. The entire hall focused on him, hundreds of alien species, waiting to hear what humanity had to say. Marcus took a deep breath and began his speech. He spoke of humanity's journey from a single planet to 12 thriving colonies. He spoke of human achievements in science, art, and philosophy. He spoke of humanity's capacity for cooperation and peace, showing examples of how Earth's nations had overcome their differences to reach for the stars together. He spoke of what humanity could offer the Galactic Council, new perspectives, new technologies, and new friendship. The response was mixed. Some delegates nodded approval or made sound of encouragement in their various languages. Others remained neutral, waiting to see how the powerful would react. But Kelver's expression never changed. His 3 eyes remained fixed on Marcus with the intensity of a predator watching prey. When Marcus finished, a wave of polite applause rippled through the chamber. It was not enthusiasm, but it was not rejection either. Marcus bowed respectfully and stepped down from the platform, his heart pounding, but his expression calm. That was when everything went wrong. Supreme Sovereign Kelver raised one of his 4 hands, and the applause died instantly. Commander Webb, he said, his voice carrying a note of something dark and dangerous. You speak well of peace and cooperation, but humanity's history tells a different story. Your species has waged war upon itself for thousands of years. You have developed weapons capable of destroying entire planets. You breed rapidly and consume resources without restraint. His eyes narrowed. Why should we believe you come in peace when violence is encoded in your very nature? The hall went absolutely silent. Every alien present recognized the accusation for what it was, a formal challenge to humanity's character. Marcus would have to respond carefully. Any sign of anger or defensiveness would be used against him. Marcus kept his voice steady and calm. Supreme Sovereign, you are correct that humanity has fought wars. We do not deny our past. But we have learned from our mistakes. We have grown beyond our violent history and reached for something better. That is why we are here, to show that change is possible, that species can evolve beyond their origins. Pretty words, Kelver said, his tone dripping with contempt. But I wonder if they are true. He made a gesture, and General Vordak stepped forward, his hand moving toward the weapon at his belt. Prove your peaceful nature, Commander. Prove that humans are not the threat we believe them to be. Marcus's military instincts screamed at him that something was terribly wrong. Sarah must have sensed it too, because she moved closer to him, her hand touching his arm in warning. Around them, the other delegates were backing away, creating an empty circle around the human diplomats. Supreme Sovereign, Marcus said carefully, I'm not sure what you're asking me to prove or how you expect me to prove it. Kelver's smile was a terrible thing to see. Then let me make it simple. He nodded to Vordak. Remove the human threat. Vordak drew his weapon in one smooth motion. It was an energy lance, a Draxian weapon that could burn through armor plating. Marcus barely had time to register what was happening before Vordak fired. The energy beam struck Marcus in the chest with the force of a hammer blow. He felt burning, searing pain that consumed everything else. His legs gave out and he fell, his body hitting the platform with a dull thud that seemed impossibly loud in the silence of the grand hall. Sarah screamed. The sound tore through the chamber like breaking glass, raw and desperate. She dropped to her knees beside Marcus, her hands pressing against the wound in his chest, trying uselessly to stop blood that poured between her fingers. Marcus tried to speak, tried to tell her to run, to get away, to save herself, but his lungs wouldn't work properly. Blood filled his mouth, copper and bitter. His vision was going dark around the edges, narrowing down to Sarah's face above him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No, no, no," Sarah sobbed. "Marcus, please, stay with me, please." Marcus managed to grab her hand with his own, his grip weak but desperate. He needed her to understand, needed her to remember everything. His lips moved, forming words that came out as barely a whisper. "Record everything. Show them what they did. Promise me." Sarah nodded frantically, tears falling onto his face. "I promise. I promise. Marcus, please." But Marcus was already gone. The light faded from his eyes, and his hand went slack in Sarah's grip. Commander Marcus Webb, humanity's first diplomat to the Galactic Council, died on the floor of the Grand Hall of Unity, while 73 alien civilizations watched in silence. General Vordak holstered his weapon with casual indifference. Supreme Sovereign Kelvin looked down at Marcus's body with satisfaction in his 3 glowing eyes. "Let this be a lesson to all who would challenge Draxian authority," he announced to the chamber. "We do not tolerate threats. We eliminate them before they can grow." Sarah knelt there, holding Marcus's hand, her mind trying to process what just happened. The translator device in her ear had recorded everything, every image, every sound, every word. The neural implant embedded in her brainstem had captured biometric data and sensory information that would prove this was no accident or misunderstanding. This was premeditated murder. Draxian guards moved to take her away. Sarah didn't resist. She let them pull at her feet, let them drag her away from Marcus's body. She looked back once, seeing his blood pooling on the pristine floor of the Grand Hall, staining the symbol of galactic unity with the price of human life. The guards threw her onto a transport ship hours later. They loaded Marcus's body into a cargo container like he was worthless freight rather than a decorated commander who had served the species with honor for 4 decades. They sealed the ship and set it on course for Earth without ceremony or explanation. As the ship pulled away from Nexus Prime, Sarah pressed her face against the viewport and watched the massive station shrink in the distance. The stars stretched into lines as the ship engaged its faster-than-light drive, carrying her home with news that would change everything. Sarah Chin sat alone in the dim cargo hold, her clothes still stained with Marcus's blood, her hands still shaking from holding him as he died. But beneath the grief and shock, something else was growing, something cold and hard and absolutely unforgiving. Supreme Sovereign Kelver had wanted to make an example. He wanted to show the galaxy what happened when lesser species forgot their place. He wanted to send a message that would terrify humanity into submission. He had succeeded in sending a message, but it was not the message he intended. Sarah activated her communication system and began composing a priority transmission to Earth Command. She attached a complete recording from her translator and neural implant, every second of Marcus's murder captured in perfect clarity. She added her own report, detailing everything she had witnessed and learned about Draxian intentions. Then she added one final line before sending the transmission across the stars toward home. They wanted war. Now they'll get it. The message crossed the light years and hours, arriving at Earth's military headquarters in Geneva in the middle of the night. Alarms began sounding across every human military installation from Earth to the most distant colonies. Admirals and generals were pulled from their beds. The president of the United Earth Federation was woken by her security chief with the words no leader ever wants to hear. "Madam President, we have a situation." Within 6 hours, the recording of Commander Marcus Webb's murder had been viewed by every member of Earth's military command. Within 12 hours, it had been broadcast to every human settlement across 12 star systems. Within 24 hours, 8 billion people knew exactly what the Draxians had done. The outrage was universal and absolute. There were no political divisions, no debate about proper response. No voices calling for patience or diplomacy. Humanity spoke with one voice for the first time in its history, and that voice demanded justice. Admiral Jackson Pierce stood in the command center deep beneath Geneva, surrounded by holographic displays, showing the disposition of human military forces across known space. He was 62 years old with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. He had fought in the colony wars, commanded the fleet that broke the pirate lords of Epsilon Eridani, and trained 3 generations of naval officers. He had spent his entire life preparing for a war he hoped would never come. Now that war had found him. The president's face appeared on the main display, her expression carved from stone. Admiral Pierce, you've reviewed the evidence? Yes, Madam President. There is no doubt. Commander Webb was murdered in cold blood under the direct orders of Supreme Sovereign Kelver. This was not an accident or misunderstanding. This was a deliberate act designed to humiliate and threaten humanity. What are our options? Admiral Pierce pulled up a tactical display showing human space and the vast territory controlled by the Draxian Empire. Conventionally, we don't have options. The Draxians control 200 star systems and possess a fleet 10 times the size of ours. In a direct military confrontation, we would lose. And unconventionally, Pierce's expression hardened into something that made even the president pause. Unconventionally, Madam President, we introduce the Draxians to the kind of warfare human perfected over thousands of years. We teach them that size and strength mean nothing against an enemy willing to do whatever it takes to win. The president was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 8 billion souls. You have complete military authority. Admiral, use whatever methods you deem necessary. Bring us justice for Commander Webb. Admiral Pierce saluted. Madam President, the Draxians killed one of ours. We will make them regret it. Across human space, the military machine began to move. Every warship was recalled to active duty. Reserves were activated, weapons were loaded, and soldiers prepared for a conflict unlike any humanity had ever fought. They were not going to war with other humans. They were going to war with an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 4,000 years. The Draxians had wanted to make an example of humanity. They had wanted to show everyone what happened to species who challenged their authority. They had murdered an unarmed diplomat in front of the entire Galactic Council. Now humanity would return the lesson. The teacher was about to become the student, and the tuition would be paid in blood and fire across the stars. The war had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The reckoning. The transport ship carrying Dr. Sarah Chun and Commander Marcus Webb's body arrived at Earth 3 days after the murder. When the ship descended through the atmosphere over Geneva, it found a world transformed. Every major city had gone dark in mourning. Buildings were draped in black fabric. Millions of people stood in silent vigil in streets and parks, holding candles that flickered like stars brought down to Earth. The entire planet grieved as one, and beneath that grief burned something far more dangerous than sorrow. Sarah walked down the landing ramp into a gray morning that matched her mood. A military honor guard waited at attention, their faces carved from stone. Behind them stood Admiral Jackson Pierce in his formal uniform, medals gleaming on his chest, eyes hard as diamonds. The president of the United Earth Federation stood beside him, flanked by the Joint Chiefs of Staff and representatives from every major government on the planet. President Elena Vasquez was a small woman with iron in her spine and fire in her eyes. She had led humanity through economic collapse, colony rebellions, and first contact with alien species. She had always advocated for peace and diplomacy. But when she looked at Sarah's blood-stained uniform, something fundamental shifted in her expression. Peace had failed. Now it was time for something else. Dr. Chun, the president said quietly, we've seen the recording. All of it. I cannot imagine what you've endured. Sarah's voice was steady despite everything. Madam President, they murdered him like he was nothing, like humanity was nothing. Commander Webb went there believing in peace, believing we could find our place among the stars through diplomacy. Her hands clenched into fists. They executed him for that belief. Admiral Pierce stepped forward. His weathered face showed no emotion, but Sarah could see fury burn behind his eyes like bank coals. Dr. Chun, I need you to tell me everything. Every detail about Nexus Prime, the Draxian military presence, their security protocols, and their leadership structure. Can you do that?" Sarah met his gaze and saw understanding there. The Admiral was not asking her to mourn. He was asking her to help him wage war. "Yes, sir. I can do that." "Good. Because we're going to make them pay for what they did. Every last one of them." Over the next 72 hours, Sarah spent every waking moment in briefing rooms deep beneath Geneva. She described the layout of Nexus Prime in exhaustive detail. She explained Draxian military formations, their weapon technologies, and the personality traits of Supreme Sovereign Kelver and his commanders. She provided intelligence on the other species present at the Galactic Council, identifying potential allies and likely enemies. Her neural implant data was extracted and analyzed by military AI systems that built tactical models of every scenario. Meanwhile, Admiral Pierce assembled his war council. The room was filled with the finest military minds humanity had ever produced. General Maria Santos commanded the Marine Corps and had personally led ground assaults on 3 different worlds. Admiral Chen Zhao oversaw the Strategic Operations Division and had written the textbook on asymmetric warfare. Colonel James Mitchell ran Special Operations Command and had a reputation for missions that officially never happened. Together, they represented humanity's capacity for organized violence on a scale the galaxy had never witnessed. Admiral Pierce stood at the head of the table, a holographic display of the Draxian Empire rotating slowly before him. 200 star systems glowing in hostile red, protected by thousands of warships and defended by armies numbering in the billions. It was an empire that crushed every challenge to its authority for 4,000 years. By every conventional measure, attacking it was suicide. Conventional warfare is not an option, Pierce said flatly. The Draxians outnumber us 10 to 1 in ships, 100 to 1 in soldiers. If we fight them on their terms, we lose. So we don't fight on their terms. General Santos leaned forward. "What are you proposing, Admiral?" Pierce's smile was cold and predatory. "We fight the way humans have always fought when facing superior enemies. We use guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare, and terror. We don't attack their strength. We attack their weakness. We don't fight their military. We destroy their economy, their infrastructure, and their will to fight. We make them afraid to close their eyes at night. The Galactic Council will condemn us," Admiral Zhao said. "They'll call us barbarians and savages." "Let them," Pierce replied. "They watched the Draxians murder our diplomat and did nothing. They chose their side. Now they'll watch us destroy an empire and learn what happens when humanity is pushed too far." Colonel Mitchell pulled up intelligence reports on his personal display. The Draxian economy depends on 37 critical supply nodes, or processors, fuel refineries, food production centers. They're spread across their empire, lightly defended because they've never been attacked before. If we hit all 37 simultaneously, we can cripple their ability to supply their military. "Do it," Pierce ordered. "I want strike teams assembled within 48 hours. Small, fast, surgical. Get in, destroy the target, get out before they can respond. Make them understand that nowhere in their empire is safe." The plan was audacious and brutal. Humanity would abandon every rule of warfare the galaxy recognized. They would strike civilian infrastructure, spread fear and chaos, and force the Draxians to defend everything while humanity defended nothing. It was not honorable or noble, but it would work. The first strike came 72 hours later at the Draxian or processing facility on Yaltak 4. The facility was enormous, processing raw materials from 6 different mining worlds and shipping refined metals throughout the empire. It employed thousands of workers and was defended by exactly 1 military garrison of 200 soldiers who had never seen combat. Lieutenant Commander Alex Rodriguez led the human strike team in 3 stealth corvettes that appeared from hyperspace 30,000 kilometers from the facility. The ships were small and fast, coated in materials that absorbed scanner signals and made them nearly invisible. They carried no heavy weapons, just teams of Marines with demolition equipment and very specific orders. The corvettes bypassed the military garrison entirely, landing at cargo bays on the opposite side of the massive facility. The Marines moved to the complex with practiced efficiency, placing shaped charges on critical support columns and reactor control systems. They encountered workers but did not harm them. Instead, they broadcast a message in the Draxian language through facility speakers. This facility will be destroyed in 30 minutes. Evacuate immediately. This is not a military action. This is justice for Commander Marcus Webb. Tell your leaders that humanity is coming. Panic spread through the facility like wildfire. Workers fled toward emergency shuttles while human Marines calmly finished placing their charges. The military garrison finally responded, but by the time they reached the cargo bays, the human corvettes were already lifting off. The charges detonated precisely on schedule, and the entire facility collapsed in a cascade of failing support structures and exploding reactors. Billions of credits worth of infrastructure turned into twisted metal and fire. The human ships vanished into hyperspace before Draxian reinforcements could arrive. Total human casualties, 0. Total Draxian casualties, 0. But the economic damage was catastrophic, and the psychological impact was even worse. The attack on Yaltak, for it was repeated 36 more times across the Draxian Empire over the next week. Fuel refineries exploded on Draxiprime. Food processing centers on Kelvor 3 went up in flames. Manufacturing complexes on Vorden Station crumbled under precisely placed demolitions. Every attack came without warning. Every attack was surgical and devastating. And every attack was accompanied by the same message. This is justice for Commander Marcus Webb. The Draxian military scrambled to respond, but they were fighting an enemy they could not predict or contain. Human strike teams appeared from nowhere, destroyed their targets, and vanished before reinforcements arrived. The Draxian fleet was massive and powerful, but it was designed to fight other fleets in open space combat. It had no defense against small, fast raiders who struck and disappeared like ghosts. Supreme Sovereign Kelvor watched his empire burn from his throne on Nexar, the Draxian homeworld. Reports flooded in from across his territory, each one more devastating than the last. His advisors argued endlessly about how to respond, but they had no answers. The humans were not behaving like any enemy the Draxians had ever faced. They were not trying to conquer territory or defeat military forces. They were simply destroying everything that kept the Empire functioning. General Vordak stood before the throne, his forearms clenched in frustration. Supreme Sovereign, we must strike back. We should attack Earth directly, show them the price of defying us. Kelvor's 3 eyes studied his general with cold calculation. And how many ships will we lose attempting to reach Earth through their defensive perimeter? How many soldiers would die on their homeworld, fighting an enemy that knows the terrain and has nothing left to lose? He shook his head slowly. No, we will defend our territory and wear them down. Humanity cannot sustain this level of military action indefinitely. They will exhaust themselves, and then we will crush them. But Kelvor did not understand humanity. He did not know that humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of sustained conflict. Earth's history was written in blood and fire, in wars that lasted decades and conflicts that consumed entire generations. Humanity knew how to hate, how to sacrifice, and how to keep fighting long after any rational species would have surrendered. While the Draxian military,